If you saw a picture of this thing, your first thought probably wouldn't be Tarrasque. A mermaid, perhaps? Well, what about this one? Looks more like a turtle had a really lucky day with the king of cats. It certainly doesn't evoke the terror that this one does, and yet it is. The Tarrasque hasn't always been your giant titan lizard whose only purpose is to eat, kill, and destroy. But that begs the question, how did one of Dungeons & Dragons' most iconic and terrifying high challenge monster go from this to this? So whether you're here for inspiration for your own storytelling or simple curiosity, or you need an answer on why a creature at the top of the food chain needs spikes on its back, let's explore the full history of the Tarrasque in this episode of History vs. D&D. The legend of the Tarrasque was first thought to appear in Provence, France in the 12th century, though the first descriptions or depictions were originally canonized in a book by French author Jacobus de Voragine called The Golden Legend, a compilation of stories about the saints published in the early 1260s. These stories often included a narrative about a saint's life, a list of miracles they performed, and lists of citation for credibility. A saint encyclopedia, if you will, so popular that even rivaled the Prince of the Bible during its time. In this particular story about Saint Martha, it depicted the beast with a serpent's tail, turtle body, bear-like claws, and a lion's head that could expel poisonous breath. However, instead of the skyscraper-sized body, this one was just 6 feet tall. And yet St. Martha reported encountering the beast swallowing a human victim, head first, leading to a common artistic portrayal of them swallowing humans whole. If you're confused about how this is a turtle and lion together, well, let me point you to a medieval painting of a hippo, where you realize that they didn't have much of the internet back then and didn't travel much, drawing creatures by secondhand descriptions and deciding that everything that lives in water must look like a fish. But there were some early reports of the cryptid near the French town of Nurlec that described a half-animal, half-fish with a hard carapace and sword-like teeth that could sink riverboats. Who knows? It could have actually been a hippo. I mean, if you look at the muzzle of a hippo and a lion, there are some similar features. Plus those look very blade-like. All I'm saying is that to a townsperson who spent their entire sheltered life in some town, I could see it. But the town in question was later named Tarrascan after the beast. But the Tarrasque was also said to be a crossbreed between the biblical Leviathan, which we talked about in our little historical Kraken exploration video, and the Onychus, a goat-like creature that shot acidic poop at its pursuers like an acid arrow. And I'm just gonna put this here. I rest my case. The only thing that I'm kind of on the fence about is the stories of the tail being long and ringed, looking considerably like that of a scorpion, but also writings that the tail ends in the shape of an arrowhead. I mean, come on. Okay, I'm sorry. It says nothing about this possibility being a hippo in any wiki I read, but there's enough evidence in my mind that this is true. The Tarrasque was a hippo. I said it. And before you say that that's way too far off base from our modern Tarrasque, you imagine a skyscraper-sized hippo and tell me that that isn't terrifying.
It's the only explanation. That old game machine must have electrocuted all of us and now
Let me know if you're on Team Hippo in the comments below. Anyways, going on. As popularity of the beast grew within our culture, you would see it in the architecture, again often swallowing people, and even in coats of arms, where it could have more of a crocodilian depiction, though the turtle shell came back later. It even became a popular festival effigy in the 1400s, reenacting the miracle of when Saint Martha subdued the beast with holy water, and the townspeople finished it off with spears and arrows. It even had its own dedicated Tarrasque feast and festival in the mid-1900s. A weird tidbit of fact is when Spain got a hold of the Tarrasque mythos, they depicted it alongside ugly old female temptresses who rode the beast, eventually evolving into the Spanish word Tarrasca, meaning an ill-natured or impudent woman. But even though the Tarrasque appeared to only have Christian roots, it may have even originated earlier than recorded. A pagan stone statue was unearthed by French archaeologist Isidore Guius called Tarrascanet, a chimeric beast with a scaly back, crunching a human arm in its mouth. Gius postulated that this was a Celtic deified beast to which human sacrifices were offered, which ultimately leads us to more modern interpretations of the Tarrasque. Did you know that the princess stealing bad guy from Mario was inspired by the same monster of your D&D Kaiju? Well, I didn't either, but it makes sense, with the spiked shell, red mane, and lion-like face. Only thing missing is the scorpion tail, but then I guess you wouldn't be able to take advantage of this weakness at that point.
Bye-bye.
You could also say that the King Koopa and all the other Koopas were also inspired by the Kappa, a Japanese myth of a trickster turtle that would pull your soul out of your butthole. But that's a whole other video. Other modern instances of the Tarrasque came in the naming of the 20mm anti-aircraft gun, as well as a small dinosaur called the Tarrascosaurus that originated from the French area in the late Cretaceous period. I could also say that the lion turtle in Naruto was inspired by it, but that's when inspirations kind of get muddy, especially when they're not explicitly cited. Because when you see a lion turtle hybrid, it could be inspired by the Tarrasque, or in the cases of the lion turtles in Avatar, The Last Airbender, it could be more likely inspired by world turtles of Chinese or Native American mythology, mixed with Avatar's thing of mixing two animals together, like a badger mole or platypus bear. Funnily enough, owl bears might fit really well in this universe. But these giant lion turtles are also said to have been inspired by Zaratan, an island-sized turtle cryptid, that also has its very own monster stat block in D&D. But speaking of Dungeons & Dragons, let's actually get to the game's version of the beast and see how it stacks up to everything that we've learned. As we look at the Tarrasque's stat block, we see a gargantuan-sized creature with a few appropriate damage immunities and blind sight. It has classic claw, tail, and horde attacks, a frightful presence, which makes sense for such a powerful creature, and swallow, which is probably its most lore-accurate ability, being able to swallow humans whole. Its siege monster also makes sense as its historical counterpart is known for sinking ships, but probably the feature that stands out the most would be its reflective carapace. It doesn't allude to any historical significance, but the thought process to make a mundane turtle shell into a shell that also reflects magic seems to be a fair stretch in a D&D game. But a main feature that is missing, at least in my eyes, is the ability to expel poison from its front end or acid from its rear, which, if you know the discourse around the Tarrasque, would have been an excellent ranged addition to the monster. Before, it could be easily picked off with a bow-wielding bird folk with a lot of time on their hands, but if it could twerk acid rain at you, that bird might think twice. Now, the only other thing to explain is its gargantuan size, which is unique only to D&D, and through all my research, the only thing that makes sense was the rising popularity of Godzilla himself during the early years of Dungeons & Dragons. In fact, in the early 1970s, Godzilla was voted the most popular movie monster, beating Dracula, King Kong, Frankenstein, and many more. Even in the lore written for the Tarrasque, it is said that there is only one Tarrasque, where it slumbers within the core of the world until one day it will wake up. Sounds a lot like Godzilla, though weirdly it states that it is known to burrow through the earth, but the stat block has no burrow speed. My guess is that just as we talked about the Kraken doubling as the stand-in for Cthulhu within Dungeons & Dragons to avoid copyright, the Tarrasque was similarly one who adopted the Kaiju aesthetics for Godzilla. I will add here that with all of my research, there is absolutely zero information about why the Tarrasque has spikes. I am so sorry. So the conjecture is entirely up to us. Could be the protection needed to fight primordials, which is one of its origin stories. It was actually created by them during an ancient war, tying its very nature to the material plane. Or for your own stories, you can just ask this: why does Godzilla have spikes? The only other prominent origin story was that it was actually an alien from another planet named Falx, that it had been transported or summoned here. Either way, as it slept between eating frenzies, it was often worshipped and protected by the Tabaxi race, offering sacrifices to the beast and even sending great warriors to accompany the Tarrasque on their escapades. Later, Karsus the Archwizard himself, with the help of a gold dragon, would later try to cut out the sleeping Tarrasque's pituitary gland as a spell component to help him ascend to godhood. If you've played Baldur's Gate 3 and recognize the name, well, that is how he did it, or at least part of it. But any of that could be inspiration for some real meaty campaigns or one-shots. But speaking of meaty inspiration, imagine this. You're galloping down a dark castle dungeon on your small dinosaur steed, grabbing gold pieces that previous adventurers have perished and left behind. The floor cracks and opens up to pools of lava below. You desperately jump from platform to platform, dodging flying fireballs and large falling stones. But these stones slowly float back up and fall again, attempting to crush you. You see the large double doors where your quarry lies ahead of you. You are here to avenge the kidnapping of your beloved. You desperately jump over a particularly large pool of lava, but dread fills you as you realize that you won't make it. So in a moment of sacrifice, you stand on your saddle and jump, sending your steed into the flames below, but giving you the boost you need to land safely. You open the doors and see the green-shelled, fire-breathing beast. Bowser has been waiting for you. And so for all of you who have stayed to the end of this video, as always, I have made something for free for you to use in the description below. This time, it's Bowser. I thought about making different versions of the Tarrasque based on what we uncovered in the history, but then I thought that this would have a much broader application, and when else would I have a better excuse to bring this Nintendo villain to the tabletop? If you wish to support this channel and get access to a whole catalog of monsters, subclasses, races, and more, all with their own beautiful PDF, then make sure to join my Patreon. Plus, when this video goes out, it will be my birthday weekend, so that would be a great present. But let me know in the comments about your Tarrasque inspiration and what D&D monster that I should do next. I thoroughly enjoy making these videos as it kind of brings me back to when I was a kid and wrote essay reports on cool animals just for fun. I know, the nerdiness runs deep, but don't forget to check out the history of the Kraken or other flavor deep dives on the channel. Until next time, go out there and make your worlds a better place. See ya.